Hi everyone, it is Miss Chelsea with the Mount Holly Branch Library, and today I have a Cook With Me video session. So with this, I took 3 recipes. Each recipe has 3 ingredients or less. They're very basic, simple recipes that I found on the Tasty website, and I wanted to try them at home and sort of experiment with them to see what worked out, what didn't work out, what was really easy, what was a little misleading, and just some of my epic failures that we will talk about and some success that I had with it. So let's go ahead and get started. Things to remember before we get into the ingredients and the recipes. I am not a professional. To be honest, I'm not even a big fan of cooking, period. I will say that I struggled with a few steps for these to be very basic recipes, but I did have fun in the end. So if you are to recreate these recipes at home, or any recipe for that matter, just remember to always read the recipe, and then when you get done, read it again, because I did not do that, and we'll talk about how I messed that up. Please remember to be safe when using a stove, oven, or any type of sharp utensils. Make sure to stay sanitary, so keep your hands and your workstation clean. And what was important for me was embrace your mistakes, because practice makes perfect. So for our 3 recipes, we are going to be making banana pancakes, pigs in a blanket, and no-bake Oreo bars. So for our first recipe of banana pancakes, you are going to need a small frying pan or a griddle, a spatula, a medium-sized bowl, a non-stick cooking spray, a fork, 1 banana, 2 tablespoons of flour, and 1 egg. So first you're going to go ahead and peel your banana, and with your fork, mash the banana until there are hardly any lumps into your medium-sized bowl. Now, you're not going to get every single lump out, but you do want to try to get as many of the bigger lumps until it's sort of a liquid mass instead of just a solid mass. So once you've got it pretty smooth, or as smooth as you can get it, go ahead and add your 2 tablespoons of flour and your egg to the mix and stir that very well. Next, take your frying pan and spray it with some non-stick cooking spray or your griddle. If you are using a pan, go ahead and heat that on the stove on medium-high heat. If you're using a griddle, just turn it on to medium-high heat. And then once it has heated up, go ahead and take 2.5 tablespoons of your batter and drop that into the pan. This is going to be a pretty small pancake, and I will tell you why in just a moment. After about 90 seconds, check the bottom of your pancake. If it's cooked, then go ahead and put your spatula all the way underneath it and carefully lift it up and flip it over to cook the other side. Once it's cooked about the same amount of time and your pancake looks cooked on both sides, go ahead and transfer it to a plate, and then just add in 2.5 more tablespoons of your batter to the pan and continue to cook the rest of your batter. So this recipe should make about 3 small pancakes, and you'll notice in the photo that there is only 1 small pancake. Well, that is because I tried to experiment and make 1 small one and then 1 big one with the remainder of the batter. And when I went to flip it, it folded in on itself and it just became a mess. So I ended up having to toss it because it was no good anymore. So I will say to go ahead and stick with the 3 small, about the 2.5 tablespoons of batter for a pancake. So if you want more pancakes, all you would need to do is double the recipe or triple the recipe depending on how many you want to make. And because the recipe is very simple and basic, that's not going to be too hard to do. So if you want to have 6 small pancakes instead of just 3, it'll be 2 eggs, 2 bananas, 4 tablespoons of flour, and then so on and so forth. Now the great thing about this is you can be very creative because it's a basic recipe. So as you can see, I added syrup to the top of mine because I love syrup with my pancakes, and I even sprinkled cinnamon on top because cinnamon and banana just goes great in my opinion. So what other ingredients could you add to enhance your pancakes? And then last but not least, embrace your mistakes. Like I said, I made one. It's okay. Now I know in the future, big pancakes are probably not my thing. I should just stick to the small ones. So next we have pigs in a blanket. For this recipe, you are going to need a baking sheet, a knife, an oven. You will need 2 containers of the crescent rolls. As you can see here, I only have one right here. I did have 2. I had just already opened one before I remembered to take the photo. So you do need 2. And you will need 1 pack of hot dogs. And the pack of hot dogs that I used are the 8 pack. So there's 8 in a pack, and they are the bun length sized. So before you get started, go ahead and preheat your oven to 375 degrees. That way, while it is heating up, you can go ahead and prep the rest of the food. So once you get your oven preheated, unroll the raw crescent dough. And then as you unroll it, you will notice that it is already perforated into triangles for you. So you just need to gently tear those apart. So you're going to separate each triangle. Take a hot dog, you're going to cut it in half and place it on the wider end of the crescent roll. And then once you've got it down there, you'll just roll it up towards the point. So you'll start down here and then just roll it up till you get to the point, and it looks like this photo. Now, as you can see, I added cheese to mine. That is an option if you want to. Again, experiment, be creative. Go outside the box with this. My family likes cheese when we eat pigs in a blanket inside of there. So if you want to do that, again, it's very easy. Take your knife. You're just going to make a cut down the center of the hot dog. Don't go all the way to the ends, and don't go all the way to the other side. So you're just making like a little pocket, and then you'll just take some very thin or strips of cheese and just stuff that in there, and then roll it up. Once all of your piggies are rolled up, you're going to place those onto a baking sheet. Give them about 1 inch to 2 inches apart. You can see how spaced out mine were, even if you have to turn some of them, because what's going to happen is when they cook, they're going to puff up and get bigger. So go ahead and put your baking sheet into your preheated oven, and you're going to cook these for about 10 to 12 minutes or until the crescent rolls are golden brown, as you can see in the photo. And this recipe will make about 16 pigs in a blanket. Now, there is another alternative on how to make these. If you don't want to use hot dogs, you can use the small cocktail sausages, but when you do go that route, one, it'll make a lot more pigs in a blanket, but they are going to be smaller. So you're going to take your dough, and when you separate it into a triangle, you're going to take a pizza cutter or a knife, and you're going to make one of those triangles, you're going to turn it into 3 different triangles. So you'll take your knife or your pizza cutter, and you'll start down here, and you'll just slice up and then slice up again. So one triangle will then turn into 3 very skinny, slim triangles. And then you'll just do the same thing as you did with the hot dog. So you'll take a small cocktail sausage and then roll it up into one of those thinner triangles. And it will make a lot more. And those are really good for snacks, or if you're going to a party or an event and there's going to be a lot of people there. That way you can serve more. So next we have the no-bake Oreo bars. For this recipe, you are going to need a microwave-safe bowl, a casserole dish. I used a 9x9 casserole dish. You are going to need a medium-sized bowl, a blender or a food processor, a spoon, some aluminum foil or parchment paper. You're going to need an entire pack of Oreos, and depending on the brand, it'll be 14 to 16 ounces, and 4 tablespoons of butter with 5 cups of marshmallows. So first, go ahead and place your Oreos into a blender or a food processor, and you're going to turn them into a crumb-like texture, as you can see over here. It's very fine, almost kind of like Oreo dust. If you have some larger pieces in your mix, that's fine. You can use your hand to break them up. If you're going to use your hand to break them up, for the larger pieces, please make sure that they are out of the blender or the processor before you stick your hand in there. Don't put your hand inside of a blender or a food processor. We still want to be safe. So pour it into a bowl, and then you can use your hand and sort of shift through it to make sure all the pieces are good and broken up. Now, what if you don't have a blender or a food processor? There is an alternative. It is going to take longer, but it still is a viable alternative. Just place your Oreos into a Ziploc bag and take a rolling pin or a kitchen mallet and just pretty much physically crush them with a mallet or a rolling pin until you get a a crumb-like texture, excuse me. Again, it takes a little bit longer, but it still works just the same. So once your Oreos are all blended up and they're, in that crumb-like texture, go ahead and take your 5 cups of marshmallows and 4 tablespoons of butter, put them into a microwave-safe bowl, place that into the microwave, and you're going to cook that for about a minute to a minute and a half until the marshmallows are melted. Now, the original recipe that I had for this called for 5 cups of the large marshmallows. My local grocery store didn't have large marshmallows. We had the small ones, like the ones that you would put in hot chocolate, just the mini ones. So I got a just regular pack of those and went home, measured it out. There were 5 cups into that regular pack, and I even still had some left over for a cup of hot chocolate if I wanted to. So the mini ones will work just fine, just like the large ones. So don't stress if you can only find one but not the other. So once they come out of the microwave, just make sure that the butter and the marshmallows are mixed well together. And then go ahead and take your crushed Oreos and just pour those into the marshmallows and stir that well. I poured a little bit at a time until I got all the Oreos in there and then mixed it up. And then once you do, you're going to go ahead and pour that mixture onto a casserole dish that has been lined with aluminum foil or parchment paper and spread as evenly as you can. Once it's spread out, just wait 10 minutes and then cut and enjoy. So when I cut mine, because I used a 9x9, I just did 9 squares and they were a good thickness. Now, if you use a larger casserole dish, they are going to be a little bit thinner. So you might want to think about maybe either adding, doubling the recipe or adding it to some ice cream or something so they're just not so thin. So again, this recipe made 9 Oreo bars with my 9x9 dish. I will say this recipe was very messy and very sticky. It was so difficult working with that melted marshmallow and these Oreos. It was sticking all over the spoon. It was all over my hands. And I don't know if you can notice, but I made a very big mistake. Do you know what it is? I didn't read through my recipe twice, and I mixed everything up and poured it straight into my casserole dish without lining it first with aluminum foil or parchment paper. So once they cooled down and I was able to cut them, they did not look very pretty when I pulled them out of the pan because they were sticking so much to my casserole dish that when I would go pull them off, they sort of stretched like taffy because of the marshmallows. So what other things could you add to the marshmallows and butter other than Oreos? So this is also how you make Rice Krispie treats. You just take Rice Krispie cereal and add it to melted marshmallows and butter. But other than that and Oreos, you could go very well outside the box, use different styles of cookies, maybe even trying cake batter, things like that, just to see how it would go. So again, embrace your mistakes. Like I said, I made a huge mistake. It was very difficult for me to get these bars out of the casserole dish. However, they tasted great. They worked fine. They just weren't as pretty as I would have wanted them to be. So what did I learn? I learned that one, flipping pancakes is difficult and takes a lot of practice, which I definitely need. I did learn that before I use my blender, I should actually learn how to use my blender. So when I was crushing the Oreo cookies inside of my blender, because I don't have a food processor, I went to pull the glass container that the Oreo crumbs were in so I could pour them into a bowl. And when I pulled it up, the bottom piece came completely off and about 2 cups of cookie dust fell onto my kitchen floor. So I was struggling really hard with the Oreo bars. Melted marshmallows mixed with anything is difficult to work with and requires patience and just knowledge going in that it is going to be sticky and messy. If a recipe says to line a dish or a pan with aluminum foil, it is for a reason. I missed that whole step, didn't worry about it, and struggled getting those Oreo bars out in one piece. I will say that I did get to experiment, and I found that it was a lot more fun for me personally to add in my own ideas to a basic recipe versus trying to follow a more complex recipe. So I think for the future, I would rather stick to these very simple basic recipes and then just sort of adding things that I like or things that I know people will like or that may taste good and seeing how that goes. even though I'm not a fan of cooking, I did enjoy making these recipes, and I will continue to hunt for more simple recipes to play around with in the future because in the end it was fun and I did learn a few things, which is always a plus. If you enjoyed this video, um, be sure to let me know, and when I find some more recipes, I will make another one and we can all sit around and just laugh at my horrible mistakes because that's the fun of it. All right, guys, I hope you have a wonderful day. If you try any of these, let me know how it worked for you. If you have some that you want to share, shoot me an email and let me know. And I hope you all have a great day. Bye.